4 teenagers broke into Pop Smoke's Airbnb and murdered him in cold blood. But here's the crazy part. 3 of them are already walking free, and one of them just did an interview showing zero remorse for taking a life. But that's not even the wildest part of this story. One of the killer's brothers was found stuffed inside a barrel that washed up on a beach in Malibu, and word on the street is that Pop Smoke's people got their revenge in the most brutal way possible. Let me break it down for you. This case is way more twisted than what the media told you. Pop Smoke was the face of New York drill music, bringing that Brooklyn energy to the world stage. His voice was different, that deep, gravelly tone that could make any beat sound menacing. But his rise to fame also made him a target. The 20-year-old rapper was gunned down in a Hollywood Hills Airbnb in February 2020, and what happened next exposed just how broken the juvenile justice system really is. The case seemed straightforward at first. 4 teens robbed and killed a rapper for his jewelry. But the deeper you dig, the more twisted this story becomes. We're talking about a justice system that let 3 killers walk free, a revenge plot that took years to unfold, and a family that's still paying the price for one night of violence. To understand how these killers beat the system and why one of them might have paid the ultimate price, we gotta go back to where it all started. Let's rewind to Canarsie, Brooklyn, where Bashar Baraka Jackson was born on July 20th, 1999. This wasn't some suburban neighborhood. We're talking about East Flatbush, where the streets teach you lessons that school never could. Pop's family was struggling financially, and his mother worked multiple jobs just to keep the lights on. His father wasn't really in the picture, so Pop had to figure out life on his own from an early age. The neighborhood was controlled by various Crip sets, and for a young kid with no father figure, the streets became his family. Pop eventually got affiliated with the 823 Crips, also known as the GS9 gang. This wasn't just some casual association. In Brooklyn, your gang affiliation could determine whether you lived or died. The 823 Crips were deep in East Flatbush, and they had ongoing beef with rival sets throughout the borough. But Pop also connected with the Wu movement, which was more than just a gang, it was a whole culture. The Wus had their own language, their own style, and their own code of conduct. When Pop started rapping about being Wu, he wasn't just talking about music, he was representing a lifestyle that came with serious consequences. Growing up, Pop saw friends get locked up, shot, or killed over territory that didn't even belong to them. But he also saw the loyalty, the brotherhood, and the respect that came with being part of something bigger than yourself. These experiences would later influence his music, but they also put a target on his back that would follow him all the way to Los Angeles. Pop didn't start rapping until he was in his late teens, which is actually pretty late in the game. Most rappers start writing rhymes when they're kids, but Pop was focused on the streets. It wasn't until he heard UK drill music that something clicked. The dark, menacing beats and aggressive delivery spoke to him in a way that American rap didn't. In 2018, Pop started experimenting with his own version of drill music, mixing Brooklyn street stories with UK-inspired production. His voice was his secret weapon, that deep, raspy tone that sounded like it came from someone twice his age. When he recorded Welcome to the Party in early 2019, he knew he had something special. The song started gaining traction on social media, and before Pop knew it, he was getting calls from major labels. But success in the rap game comes with its own set of problems. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know where Pop was from, who he was affiliated with, and whether he was really about the life he rapped about. By late 2019, Pop Smoke was one of the hottest new artists in hip-hop. His mixtape, Meet the Wu, was climbing the charts, and he had collaborations lined up with artists like Travis Scott and Quavo. But with fame came scrutiny, and Pop's gang affiliations became a topic of conversation in every interview. The problem with being a successful rapper from the streets is that you become a symbol. Other gangs see you as representing your set, and any disrespect toward you is disrespect toward your whole crew. Pop tried to stay neutral in most beefs, but his music made it clear where his loyalties lay. When he rapped, "I'm Wu, yeah, I'm Wu," he wasn't just making music, he was making a statement that would eventually cost him his life. In February 2020, Pop Smoke flew out to Los Angeles for what was supposed to be a working vacation. He had studio time booked, meetings with industry executives, and plans to shoot music videos. LA was where careers were made, and Pop was ready to take his success to the next level. He rented a luxury Airbnb in the Hollywood Hills through a third-party booking service. The house was perfect for his needs, secluded enough for privacy, but close enough to the studios where he'd be working. Pop brought his friend Mike D with him. someone he trusted to watch his back in an unfamiliar city. But Pop made a crucial mistake. He treated LA like it was just another vacation spot. He didn't realize that his Brooklyn gang affiliations meant nothing for protection in Los Angeles. If anything, they made him a target. The Crips in LA operated differently than the ones in New York, and the Hoover gang had their own agenda. Pop's first few days in LA were everything he hoped for. He was shopping on Rodeo Drive, eating at expensive restaurants, and living the life that his music had afforded him. But he was also documenting everything on social media, showing off stacks of cash, expensive jewelry, and his exact location. For someone with his profile and affiliations, this was like painting a target on his back. The Hollywood Hills house was supposed to be a safe haven, but Pop's social media posts were giving potential robbers a roadmap to his location. And in a city where home invasions targeting celebrities were common, Pop was making himself an easy target. On February 18, 2020, Pop Smoke made the mistake that would cost him his life. He posted a series of photos on Instagram showing off his success, stacks of cash, a thick gold chain, and a diamond-studded Rolex watch that probably cost more than most people make in a year. But the real problem wasn't the jewelry or the cash, it was the details in the background. In one photo, you could clearly see an Amiri gift bag with the Airbnb's address partially visible. The numbers were right there for anyone who knew how to look. Mike D made it even worse by geotagging their exact location on Instagram, essentially giving potential robbers GPS coordinates to their front door. This wasn't just careless, it was dangerous. Pop had over 1 million followers on Instagram, and not all of them were fans. Some were watching his every move, looking for opportunities. In Los Angeles, where celebrity home invasions were practically an industry, Pop's posts were like sending out invitations to get robbed. 2 teenagers from the Hoover gang in South LA were scrolling through Pop's Instagram that night, and they immediately recognized the opportunity. These weren't random kids. They were experienced street dudes who knew how to read social media posts for valuable information. They screenshot the photos, zoomed in on the address, and started planning their move. The Hoover gang had a reputation for targeting high-profile victims, and they saw Pop Smoke as the perfect score. He was young, probably not heavily protected, and clearly had expensive items worth stealing. Plus, his Crip affiliations made him an enemy in their eyes, so robbing him would be both profitable and personal. Cell phone records later showed that around midnight on February 18th, the 2 teens started researching Pop's location. They looked up the address on Google Maps, studied the house layout on Zillow, and even researched LAPD response times in that area. This wasn't some impulsive decision. They were planning a military-style operation. The 2 original planners knew they couldn't pull off the robbery alone, so they started recruiting help. They reached out to other members of their crew, eventually assembling a 5-person team for the job. The crew consisted of a 15-year-old who went by Blockstar on the streets, a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, 19-year-old Corey Walker, and a mysterious 5th person whose identity was never revealed. Corey Walker was the oldest and most experienced, so he naturally became the leader of the operation. At 19, he had already been involved in multiple robberies and had connections throughout South LA. The younger kids looked up to him and were willing to follow his lead, even if it meant committing murder. Blockstar, the 15-year-old, was the most dangerous member of the crew. Despite his age, he had already built a reputation for violence and wasn't afraid to pull the trigger. The other teens knew that if things went wrong, Blockstar would be the one to handle it. This combination of youth and violence would prove deadly for Pop Smoke. The crew spent hours planning the robbery, studying photos of the house, and mapping out their approach. They decided to hit the house in the early morning hours when Pop would be asleep and security would be minimal. Walker provided the weapons, including the Beretta 9mm that would ultimately kill Pop Smoke. They also planned their escape route, identifying multiple ways to get back to South LA if things went wrong. Walker would drive the getaway car while the younger members went inside to confront Pop. They brought ski masks, gloves, and even a police scanner to monitor law enforcement activity in the area. At 2:05 a.m. on February 19, 2020, a black BMW pulled up outside Pop Smoke's Airbnb. Walker and the 17-year-old got out to scope the house, looking for the best way to get inside without being detected. They could see lights on in multiple rooms and heard voices coming from inside. The passenger got out and snuck toward the back of the house, looking for unlocked doors or windows, but there were too many people awake and Pop wasn't even home yet. He was still at East West Studios recording new music. The risk was too high, so they decided to abort the mission and come back later. This first attempt shows how calculated the crew was. They weren't just going to rush in and hope for the best. They were waiting for the perfect opportunity. Walker drove them back to South LA, where they regrouped and recruited additional help for the second attempt. The crew switched cars to an Infiniti sedan, thinking it would be less conspicuous than the BMW. They also brought more weapons and equipment, preparing for any resistance they might encounter. The delay also gave them more time to study the house layout using online photos and satellite images. By 3 a.m., they were ready to try again. This time, they were determined to complete the mission, regardless of who got hurt in the process. Around 3 a.m., Pop Smoke returned to the Airbnb with Mike D and a woman named Amelia Rose, who he had met that night. Pop was tired from the studio session and ready to relax. He and Amelia went upstairs to the master bedroom while Mike went to a guest room down the hall. Pop was feeling good about the music he had recorded that night. He was working on tracks that he believed would take his career to the next level, but he was also exhausted and looking forward to getting some sleep before another busy day of meetings and studio sessions. Amelia later testified that Pop seemed relaxed and happy that night. He wasn't acting paranoid or worried about security, which suggests he had no idea that his Instagram posts had attracted the wrong kind of attention. Pop trusted that the secluded location and expensive neighborhood would keep him safe. Meanwhile, the 4 teenagers were already in position outside the house. They had parked the Infiniti sedan down the street with the lights off and were preparing to make their move. Walker stayed in the driver's seat while the 3 younger members prepared to enter the house. The crew had studied the house layout extensively and knew exactly where the master bedroom was located. They planned to enter through the second-floor balcony, which would give them direct access to where Pop was staying. The element of surprise was crucial to their plan. At approximately 4 a.m., Pop decided to take a shower before going to bed. This decision would prove fatal, as it left him completely vulnerable when the robbers entered the house. He had no weapons, no protection, and no way to defend himself against multiple armed attackers. The 3 teenagers moved like shadows through the backyard, using the darkness to conceal their approach. They had practiced this type of entry before and knew exactly how to climb to the second-floor balcony without making noise. Each of them wore ski masks and gloves to avoid leaving evidence. Blockstar carried the Beretta 9mm that Walker had provided, while the other 2 carried backup weapons. They communicated through hand signals, having planned every aspect of the invasion in advance. The police scanner crackled quietly in Walker's ear as he monitored law enforcement activity in the area. The balcony door was unlocked, which made their entry even easier. They slipped through the curtains and into the master bedroom where Amelia Rose was lying in bed. She was the first to notice movement in the room, but before she could scream or alert Pop, one of the masked men put a gun to her head. "Shut the fuck up, do you want to die?" the gunman hissed, pressing the barrel against her temple. Amelia was terrified and complied immediately, not wanting to escalate the situation. The robbers took her phone and purse, ensuring she couldn't call for help. While one robber controlled Amelia, the other 2 headed toward the bathroom where they could hear the shower running. Pop was completely unaware of what was happening just a few feet away. The sound of the water masked any noise the intruders might have made. The bathroom door was partially open, and through the steam they could see Pop's silhouette in the shower. He was wearing his jewelry, the diamond-studded Rolex and gold chain that had attracted them in the first place. This was exactly what they had come for. When the 2 masked teenagers burst into the bathroom, Pop was caught completely off guard. He was naked, vulnerable, and had nowhere to run. The robbers immediately demanded his jewelry, pointing their guns at him and shouting commands. "Give us the watch! Give us the chain!" they yelled, while Pop tried to process what was happening. For a moment, he seemed to comply, even saying thank you when it appeared he was going to cooperate. This detail from court testimony suggests that Pop initially tried to de-escalate the situation. But Pop Smoke wasn't the type to go out without a fight. Despite being naked and outnumbered, he decided to resist. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was instinct, or maybe he thought he could overpower the young robbers. Whatever his reasoning, Pop lunged at the gunman in an attempt to disarm him. This decision cost him his life. The moment Pop fought back, 15-year-old Blockstar pistol whipped him with the Beretta and then shot him in the chest. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the house, alerting everyone that something had gone terribly wrong. Pop fell to the bathroom floor, bleeding from the gunshot wound. But the violence didn't stop there. According to court testimony, 2 of the masked teens began kicking Pop while he was down, showing a level of brutality that went beyond simple robbery. Somehow, despite being shot and beaten, Pop managed to get back on his feet. His survival instincts kicked in and he ran out of the bathroom toward the stairs, trying to escape his attackers. But Blockstar wasn't finished with him. As Pop stumbled toward the staircase, Blockstar followed him and fired 2 more shots into his back. These weren't warning shots or shots fired in panic. They were execution-style shots meant to kill. Pop collapsed at the top of the stairs and then tumbled down to the first floor. The entire attack lasted less than 5 minutes, but the damage was done. Pop Smoke lay bleeding at the bottom of the stairs while his killers ransacked the house looking for more valuables. They grabbed his diamond-encrusted Rolex, some jewelry, and Amelia's purse before fleeing through the same balcony they had used to enter. Mike D was awakened by the gunshots and found Pop at the bottom of the stairs, barely conscious and losing blood rapidly. He immediately called 911, but even as he was speaking to the dispatcher, he could see that Pop was fading fast. Hello, I need an ambulance," Mike frantically told the 911 operator. "My friend has been shot. He's bleeding really bad. Please hurry." But by the time paramedics arrived 20 minutes later, Pop had already lost too much blood. The paramedics rushed Pop to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where trauma surgeons worked desperately to save his life. They opened his chest to access his heart and lungs, but the damage from the 3 gunshot wounds was too severe. At 5:12 a.m. on February 19, 2020, Pop Smoke was officially pronounced dead. He was just 20 years old. While Pop Smoke was fighting for his life in the hospital, his killers were already back in South LA, celebrating their successful robbery. Cell phone records later showed that they immediately started searching online to see if Pop's death had been reported in the news yet. They also looked up the value of the stolen Rolex, trying to figure out how much money they could get for it. What they discovered was disappointing. The diamond-encrusted watch that Pop probably paid $30,000 or more for was only worth about $2,000 on the street. They had killed someone for what amounted to $500 per person. The investigation into Pop's murder was complicated by the fact that the killers had been relatively careful about covering their tracks. They wore masks and gloves, used a stolen car, and didn't leave obvious evidence at the scene. But they made one crucial mistake: they couldn't keep their mouths shut. LAPD detectives spent months following leads and analyzing evidence. They had cell phone records showing the suspects' movements that night, surveillance footage of the cars used in the robbery, and witness testimony from Amelia Rose and Mike D. But they needed more concrete evidence to make arrests. The breakthrough came when the 15-year-old shooter was arrested for an unrelated crime in May 2021. Police already had him as a person of interest in Pop's murder, so they decided to use an old-school investigative technique. They rigged his jail cell with recording devices and waited for him to incriminate himself. The strategy worked perfectly. Within days of being placed in juvenile detention, Blockstar started bragging to his cellmate about killing Pop Smoke. He described the robbery in detail, explaining how they tracked Pop down through his Instagram posts and planned the invasion. "We asked for his jewelry, but he wasn't going for it," Blockstar told his cellmate, not knowing that every word was being recorded. "He started fighting back, so I shot him 3 times. We got his watch and some other stuff, but it wasn't worth much." The recorded confession was exactly what prosecutors needed to build their case. Blockstar had not only admitted to being present during the robbery, but had specifically claimed responsibility for shooting Pop Smoke. His own words would be used against him in court. Corey Walker, the 19-year-old driver, also got caught up when police placed an informant in his adult jail cell. Walker confessed to his role in the murder, providing details about how they planned the robbery and what went wrong. "We used ski masks, gloves, and a police scanner," Walker told the informant. "The plan was just to rob him, not kill him. But when he fought back, the kid panicked and shot him. I was mad about it because that wasn't supposed to happen." Walker also revealed that he had assaulted Blockstar after learning about the shooting, claiming that he never intended for anyone to get hurt. But his confession also implicated him as the mastermind behind the robbery, making him equally responsible for Pop's death. By 2023, all 4 defendants were facing serious charges and prosecutors were pushing for maximum sentences. The case had attracted national attention, and there was pressure to send a message that celebrity murders wouldn't be tolerated. But the defendants had one major advantage. 3 of them were juveniles at the time of the crime, which meant they would be sentenced under California's juvenile justice system. This system is designed to rehabilitate young offenders rather than simply punish them, which would prove crucial to their cases. In May 2023, Blockstar, the 15-year-old shooter, was the first to accept a plea deal. He admitted to first-degree murder and home invasion robbery and was sentenced to 50 years to life in prison. On the surface, this seemed like justice. The killer would spend the rest of his life behind bars. But there was a catch that most people didn't understand. Under California juvenile law, offenders who commit crimes before age 18 can only be held until age 25. regardless of their sentence. This meant that Blockstar would be released on his 21st birthday, having served less than 6 years for murder. The 17-year-old defendant pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter and home invasion robbery in April 2023 and was sentenced to 4 years in juvenile detention. Since he had already been locked up for over 3 years awaiting trial, he was released shortly after his sentencing. The 16-year-old also settled his case around the same time, receiving a similar sentence and being sent to a post-conviction juvenile facility. Like the others, he was released after serving approximately 4 to 5 years total. Only Corey Walker, the adult in the group, faced the full weight of the justice system. In February 2025, he accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 29 years in prison. The murder charge was dropped in exchange for his guilty plea to voluntary manslaughter and home invasion robbery with gang enhancements. In July 2024, something happened that shocked Pop Smoke's fans and the hip-hop community. Blockstar appeared on the No Jumper podcast to discuss his role in the murder. The interview was controversial from the moment it was announced, but what Blockstar said during the conversation was even more disturbing. "I'm not sorry about nothing," Blockstar stated matter-of-factly. "It should have never happened, but I ain't sorry. If I could go back, I'd go back, but I ain't sorry. People die every day." Pop Smoke was rapping about it, all types of stuff. "So I ain't sorry about it. I send my condolences to the family." The lack of remorse was stunning. Here was someone who had taken another person's life, served minimal time, and was now on a popular podcast essentially bragging about beating the system. He tried to justify the murder by claiming that Pop Smoke was rapping about violence, as if that somehow made him a legitimate target. Blockstar also attempted to minimize his role in the crime, saying, "Nobody was intended to get hurt, and we were just kids being kids, kids from the hood." But when pressed about who actually pulled the trigger, he refused to answer directly, even though he had already confessed to the shooting in jail. "It was a robbery. Nobody sent us. Nobody did none of that," he claimed, trying to dispel rumors that the murder was gang-related or ordered by someone else. But his casual attitude about taking a life suggested that he saw the whole thing as just another day in the streets. The interview went viral for all the wrong reasons. Pop Smoke's fans were outraged that his killer was being given a platform to tell his story, especially when he showed no remorse for his actions. Many people called for the interview to be taken down, but the damage was already done. But while Blockstar was doing interviews and seemingly getting away with murder, something was happening behind the scenes that would change everything. In early 2024, a park employee at Malibu Lagoon State Beach made a gruesome discovery: a barrel floating in the water that contained a human body. When lifeguards opened the barrel, they found the remains of Javonte Murphy, a young man from Los Angeles. At first, it seemed like just another tragic case of gang violence in LA, but then investigators discovered a connection that sent shockwaves through the hip-hop community. Javonte Murphy was the brother of Jaquan Murphy, who had been one of the 5 people originally arrested for Pop Smoke's murder. Although Jaquan was never charged and was eventually cleared in the case, his connection to the crime made his brother a potential target for retaliation. Lieutenant Hugo Renaga from the LA County Sheriff's Homicide Department noted that the body didn't appear to have been decomposing for long, suggesting that Javonte had been killed recently and then dumped in the ocean. The method of disposal, stuffing the body in a barrel and throwing it into the water, indicated a level of planning and brutality that suggested this wasn't a random killing. The timing was suspicious. Pop Smoke's killers had just been released from custody, Blockstar had done his controversial interview, and suddenly someone connected to the case turns up dead in the most brutal way possible. People in the streets immediately started connecting the dots. Word on the street was that Pop Smoke's people had never forgotten what happened to their friend. The 823 Crips, GS9, and the Wu movement had been waiting patiently for the right opportunity to get their revenge. When the legal system failed to deliver justice, they decided to take matters into their own hands. The fact that Javonte Murphy was targeted, despite his brother being cleared of charges, sent a clear message. Anyone connected to Pop Smoke's death was fair game. It didn't matter if you were legally cleared or if you weren't directly involved in the shooting. If you were part of the crew that night, you and your family were marked. The method of killing was particularly significant. Stuffing someone in a barrel and dumping them in the ocean is a message killing. It's meant to be discovered and to send fear into anyone else who might be thinking about crossing the wrong people. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about deterrence. Some people in the streets believe that Javonte's death was just the beginning. With 3 of Pop Smoke's killers now free and showing no remorse, they could all become targets for retaliation. The interview that Blockstar did might have sealed his fate by showing that he hadn't learned anything from his experience. The fifth suspect, whose identity was never revealed, is probably looking over their shoulder every day. If Pop Smoke's people are systematically targeting everyone connected to his death, this mysterious fifth person could be next on the list. The LAPD is officially investigating Javonte Murphy's death as a separate case, but detectives are well aware of the potential connection to Pop Smoke's murder. They're being careful not to publicly confirm any links between the cases, knowing that doing so could spark more violence and retaliation. But privately, law enforcement sources acknowledge that the connection is too obvious to ignore. The timing, the method, and the victim's family connection to Pop Smoke's case all point to this being a revenge killing. The question is whether they can prove it in court. The challenge for investigators is that street justice operates by different rules than the legal system. The people responsible for Javonte's death aren't likely to confess to cellmates or leave obvious evidence behind. They've learned from watching Pop Smoke's killers get caught through their own mistakes. There's also the question of whether more violence is coming. If this was indeed retaliation for Pop Smoke's death, will his killers try to strike back? Could this spiral into a full-scale war between different factions in LA and New York? Law enforcement is taking the threat seriously, but there's only so much they can do to prevent street justice. The people involved in this world don't call the police when they have problems. They handle things themselves, often with deadly consequences. The Pop Smoke case has exposed fundamental flaws in California's juvenile justice system that go far beyond this single incident. The idea that someone can commit murder at 15 and be free by 21 seems to contradict the basic principles of justice and public safety. Blockstar's interview showed that the system's focus on rehabilitation had completely failed in his case. Instead of learning from his mistakes and showing remorse for taking a life, he was essentially bragging about beating the system. This raises serious questions about whether some young offenders can actually be rehabilitated. The disparity in sentences is also troubling. Corey Walker, who stayed in the car and didn't pull the trigger, will serve 29 years in prison. Meanwhile, the actual shooter served less than 6 years and is now free to do podcast interviews. How does this serve justice for Pop Smoke's family or deter future crimes? Legal experts argue that California's juvenile laws were written for a different era, when youth crime was less violent and sophisticated. Today's young criminals have access to social media, advanced weapons, and criminal networks that didn't exist when these laws were created. The case also highlights the role of social media in modern crimes. Pop Smoke's Instagram posts literally led his killers to his door, but there are no laws preventing this type of digital stalking. Celebrities and high-profile individuals are essentially broadcasting their locations to potential criminals every time they post. Pop Smoke's death changed drill music and hip-hop culture in ways that are still being felt today. He was supposed to be the face of Brooklyn Drill, the artist who would bring New York back to the forefront of rap music. His posthumous album, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon, went to #1, showing just how much potential was lost. But his death also served as a wake-up call for other artists about the dangers of social media. Most rappers are now much more careful about what they post and when they post it. They use fake locations, post old photos, and keep their real movements private. The days of real-time flexing on Instagram are largely over. The case also highlighted the ongoing tension between authenticity and safety in hip-hop. Fans want their favorite artists to be real and to represent the streets they came from. But this authenticity can make artists targets for violence, especially when they're successful and have valuable possessions. Pop Smoke's gang affiliations followed him from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, ultimately contributing to his death. This has made other artists more aware of how their local beefs and affiliations can create problems when they travel to different cities. The drill music scene has also been affected by increased scrutiny from law enforcement and social media platforms. Many drill artists have had their music removed or restricted because of violent content, and some have been arrested based on lyrics that police claim are confessions to real crimes. As of 2025, the aftermath of Pop Smoke's murder continues to unfold in unexpected ways. 3 of his 4 killers are free, living their lives while his family still grieves. Blockstar is somewhere in Los Angeles, probably still trying to profit from his story and showing no signs of remorse for what he did. The 16 and 17-year-olds who participated in the robbery have tried to stay out of the spotlight, but their freedom is a constant reminder of how the system failed Pop Smoke's family. They served minimal time for participating in a murder and are now free to rebuild their lives while Pop's life was cut short at 20. Only Corey Walker remains behind bars, serving his 29-year sentence in a California state prison. But if the death of Javonte Murphy is any indication, Pop Smoke's people have long memories and aren't interested in forgetting. Jaquan Murphy, Javonte's brother, is currently in jail awaiting trial for an unrelated murder. He couldn't protect his brother from whatever happened, and now he has to live with the knowledge that his connection to Pop Smoke's case may have cost his brother his life. The barrel that washed up on Malibu Beach contained more than just a body. It contained a message that the streets never forget. Pop Smoke's death may have seemed like just another robbery gone wrong, but the people who loved him saw it as something much more serious. The legal system gave Pop Smoke's killers slaps on the wrist, but the streets operate by different rules. When Blockstar did that interview showing no remorse, he might have signed his own death warrant. When the other killers walked free after serving minimal time, they might have thought they had beaten the system. But the system isn't the only form of justice in this world. The death of Javonte Murphy shows that this story is far from over. His killing was brutal, calculated, and designed to send a message to anyone else connected to Pop Smoke's death. The fact that he was found in a barrel floating in the ocean wasn't an accident. It was meant to be discovered and to strike fear into the hearts of Pop's killers. For Blockstar and the other freed killers, every day is now a gamble. They might think they got away with murder, but the streets have a long memory. Pop Smoke's people waited patiently for years, watching the legal proceedings and biding their time. Now that the courts have failed, they're taking matters into their own hands. The fifth suspect, whoever they are, is probably living in constant fear. They managed to avoid charges and stay out of the spotlight, but that might not be enough to save them. If Pop Smoke's people are systematically targeting everyone connected to his death, this person's anonymity might be their only protection. Pop Smoke's legacy lives on through his music, but his death also serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame, social media, and street life. He was just 20 years old when he was killed, with his whole life and career ahead of him. The potential that was lost is immeasurable. His death exposed the flaws in California's juvenile justice system and showed how young killers can literally get away with murder. The fact that 3 teenagers served less than 6 years each for killing someone is a travesty that should outrage anyone who believes in justice. But the death of Javonte Murphy shows that legal justice isn't the only kind of justice in this world. The streets have their own code, their own courts, and their own methods of punishment. When the legal system fails, street justice often fills the void. For young people watching this case unfold, the message should be clear. Actions have consequences, even if the courts don't hold you accountable. You might beat the case, but you can't beat the streets. The people who love Pop Smoke will never forget what happened to him, and they will never stop seeking justice. The case also shows how social media can be a deadly weapon in the wrong hands. Pop Smoke's Instagram posts gave his killers everything they needed to track him down and kill him. In today's world, privacy isn't just about personal preference. It can be a matter of life and death. For the hip-hop community, Pop Smoke's death was a wake-up call about the real dangers that successful artists face. Fame and fortune can make you a target, and the streets don't care about your success or potential. One mistake, one careless post, one moment of vulnerability can cost you everything. The story of Pop Smoke's murder and its aftermath is still being written. 3 killers are free, 1 is in prison, 1 is unidentified, and 1 family member is dead. The cycle of violence continues, and more blood may be shed before this story reaches its conclusion. But one thing is certain, Pop Smoke's people will never forget what happened to him, and they will never stop seeking justice. The barrel that washed up on that Malibu beach was just the beginning. The real reckoning is still to come.